Okay, so I'm going to record this, so just be aware that this is now recording. I'm hoping that my volume will be okay. I usually don't have a problem with volume. Recording for James and Emily, and if you want to go over it again. Okay, so what I've done is I've got the examiner's report. Now all of you can also download the examiner's report. It's on the VCAR website up there, blah blah blah, vcar.vic.edu.au. And the comments were that students who were well prepared were able to answer the 8 questions in the examination with some depth in their responses, and were able to complete all questions in the specified time. So that's meaning that the exam's not too strenuous, it's not too long, you had the right amount of time and so on. They found it, for some questions, many students had memorised a prepared response. The word from the chief curriculum person is don't do that, because if you have a prepared response, it may not quite fit the question. And I know when I did Year 12 many thousands of years ago, we knew that we would have an exhibition question. And so it was a longer exam, and we would have a 2-page essay written that we would memorise, because we would have to talk about that in the exam. The exam question was the same about an exhibition every single year. So I think that's sort of like a carryover where people have just tried to make it easier for students by getting them to memorise stuff. But it works much better if you can actually interpret the information and put it into the right context. Students are advised to focus on responding to the requirements of each question rather than relying on memorised materials. Students in this report have not been corrected for grammar, spelling or factual information. The report provides sample answers or an indication of what answers may have included. Unless otherwise stated, these are not intended to be exemplary or complete responses. Okay, so there's no saying that what is happening is correct. So, and here we've got some statistics. Section A. So what's the question worth on Section A? The first question 1 is worth 8 marks. The average was 4.5. So, and you can see a range of marks. So this question required you to describe the studio process in the production of the artwork. The highest scoring responses started with the initial drawings, and working from inspiration progressed through a variety of processes describing how the work was constructed and what materials were required. They were also able to describe how materials, techniques and processes played their part in creating the work. Lower scoring responses tended to give a general description of the subject matter of the work and did not address the specific areas of the question. These students wrote about the artist's use of art elements and principles, which was incorrect. Often the process was not addressed. And the responses did not refer to the sequential steps involved in the making of the artwork. So remember, we talked about photography as being, and I'm going to make a little video, I think, to show you the photographic process with the enlarger and things, because I think the silver gelatin process is a really simple one to explain if you understand it. I know that. Okay, so if you see it, and I know if you're like me, I'm a hands-on learner, I need to see it and do it, and then I remember it. Okay, so, and they reckon that 95% of information is retained when you teach it. So that's why I'm getting you guys to have a look through this. So you should all have read through question 1. Who's got a good one?
No. It's not good. Don't even say it.
Okay, so Mary, following is an example of a high-scoring response. Mary Cassatt's oil painting in the log would have begun its creation by stretching a canvas over a wooden frame and nailing the canvas in place in order to create the desired proportions for the piece. So that's exactly what we've talked about. You've seen me prepare the canvases in various different sizes. If it's oil on canvas or acrylic on canvas, it's always the same process. What's the next step? So you've got the frame, you've put the canvas on. What's the next step?
Applying the actual canvas paper.
Okay, we've applied the canvas.
Gesso.
Gesso. Why do we apply gesso? Absolutely. So the paint will sit on the surface and not be absorbed. Okay, so, and then you called it a primer. Exactly the same. Anyone who's painted at home, done some outside painting or whatever, you use an undercoat. Gesso is literally undercoat. Okay, so after using a primer, the colour of the pigment that would later be applied, Cassatt would have added the imprimatura or ground to the piece, which would unify the different colour of the piece under a single hue, which was likely a warm yellow. Okay, so they're talking about putting a whole coating and undercoating of a colour that's relevant to the whole piece.
Can we write down? That's the stuff we're looking for.
So students are now working through, correcting each other's work, and finding and highlighting all of the studio processes and crossing out any art elements and principles. Does anyone want to read out just the key points? You don't have to read out the answers, but if someone's got a really good sentence that they'd like to share.
I don't know, but this highlighter is amazing. So clean.
Brand new. Anything for you, right?
Lines,
It's highlighting.
It's so nice.
Phoenix, have you got something, a sentence, words?
They don't dip, there's just,
Watson would have likely started with lighter colours before rotating on the dark colours.
Okay, so starting with lighter colours, moving on to darker colours. Colours of what? Did we talk about what medium it was?
They were pencils.
Pencils. Okay, so coloured pencils or grey lead pencil?
I mentioned grey lead earlier in the paragraph, but later on mentioned coloured pencils.
Okay, cool. I'm not sure which artwork it's referring to. And that's where all of the different, it could be any of the different artworks. Did anyone do Mary Cassatt? Sabrina, have you got a good example there? Or an example that you want to share with us?
wait, does anyone have my book?
Yeah, Sabrina. Okay, you've got a bit of highlight there.
No.
Okay. There are some areas where you've talked about like elements and principles. I'll get the bad stuff, okay?
Yeah, no. We just want to. I
Okay.
only want to focus on the studio process.
Okay. Charcoal is applied thickly on the piece, which is applied over the dried layer of paint in the background. That's good stuff.
That was good.
Techniques: applying charcoal on a dry surface in the process, which includes applying on the paint, letting it dry, and then applying everything else. I would say that you would need to be specific, but you're on the track.
Yeah, absolutely. Good work. Have you got something? Yeah. Nice and loud so the recording
For
gets it.
Nicholas's artwork, she used oil paint on canvas. The canvas would have needed to be prepared with a layer of gesso. This priming of the canvas prevents the colours of the oil paint from sinking in the canvas and dulling.
Nice. Okay, so it's there. It's definitely there. Does that give everyone a better understanding of how that question should be framed? And could you, if you had another go, and I'm going to give you another chance to do this same exam and improve it, okay? So let's go down to question number 2. The average was 4.8. Okay, considerations of the artists or curators in conserving, we'll miss that one because that's Unit 4. Question 3. Art elements and principles to communicate ideas and meanings in an artwork. Students who performed well in this answer ensured that they were explicit in identifying where in the artwork the art elements and art principles were evident and used consistent art terminology such as the variations in tone quality and directional line markings were strongly scrawled across the desolate and lifeless sports stadium located in the background of Kentridge's charcoal drawing. Okay, so don't just put down. The artist used line and colour, and you need to explain where you see it and what impact it has on the artwork. Okay, so go through, highlight art elements, art principles.
There's so much to highlight to that. So much. Can you not?
Maybe.
Okay, so limited responses or responses where you might get 1 or 2 simply listed art elements and art principles and did not describe how they were applied. They often neglected to refer to the impact of their use. Responses need to link the art elements to art principles, for example, by referring to art elements as the building blocks and how they are used to align with the art principles. Okay, so eerie repetition in the uniforms and haircuts, communicating a sense of predictability, furthermore creating an eerie and unusual feel. So that is giving you the impact of the art elements and principles. Okay, feature of the colour red in an otherwise tonal colour palette. Which artwork is it?
It's the one with the girl.
It's like the Last Supper, but it's like.
Yeah.
Really love one.
Okay, yeah, cool. So I would, what could be another word for tonal in that situation? I'd almost say monochrome because it looks very monochrome or achromatic. So it's very.
I can still line it to make it one colour.
Yeah. So tonal colour palette draws attention to the scarves. Red is that colour. Red is the colour that if you want something to pop, you're going to make it red. And it's just that colour that draws your eyes straight to it. Suggestion of movement through suspended actions of the girls suggests there is great deliberation and thoughts taking place. The stark off-white background colour summons a sense of monotony and blandness. The focal point, the centre young girl, suggests her as the mediator between two sides, perhaps suggesting a sense of conflict between the two ideas within her. The variety of actions taking place parallels with those of the Last Supper, further accentuating a sense of deliberation and communication between many parties. Furthermore, the variety principle suggests a sense of many conflicting ideas. The repetition of features in the girls bolsters a sense of monotony and dismay within the piece's overall mood. So repetition's the principle, repetition, what's being repeated is the features, and it bolsters or creates a greater sense of monotony, the impact, and dismay, the impact within the piece's overall mood. Who's got something that they would like to read out? Remember, it's not your work, so it doesn't matter.
Wait, what question is this? 3.
3.
Oh, I thought you were 3.
So this is the art elements and principles one. So, Eliza, what have you got?
Oh. Hold on.
A sentence.
Just a sentence or
yeah.
some words? An element and the impact?
Yeah, it's mostly impact. It doesn't specify where a lot of it is.
Yeah.
Personally, I believe this artwork of a house may have been the artist's childhood home, or a home in which they have developed many memories, whether good or bad.
Okay, is that pertinent to the art elements and principles though?
It's
like an overall description.
Yeah, it's analyzing meaning. Like that's the impression.
Was that the question though?
I saw meaning in the question.
Yeah, there is a meaning,
Okay.
but it doesn't specify where it's found.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's us for art elements and principles.
So my feedback would be find what art elements and principles give this homey impression.
Cool.
Also less like generalized description.
Less
Generalized, yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, and this is why it's a learning process. Sabrina, have you got something you'd like to share with us?
Oil and canvas paint part of the freedom wheel utilizes elements of color to create a sense of contrast between warm tones of yellow and orange to create hues of blue background.
I couldn't hear. Yes, please.
Oil and canvas painting titled The Freedom Wheel utilizes elements of color to create a sense of contrast between warm tones of yellow and orange to cooler hues of blue.
Okay, that's a really good one. That it's the colour is providing contrast. It's saying where. Does it say what impact it has on the artwork?
The viewer's attention is immediately directed towards the yellowish oranges of the flowers as they were saturated in those areas of the piece.
Cool. Good use of words too, that it's saturated colour. So, yeah, we can just work on refining some of
I
those.
think that was my one. I actually explained it later on.
Okay. All right, section B. Did anyone have a go at this?
Question 5 and stuff.
Question 4. So this question you the opportunity to explain the focus and subject matter of your exploration
I
proposal.
was just about to start.
Okay. The question had two components, the focus and the subject matter. Higher scoring answers broaden your exploration of focus to include ideas and meaning, conceptual possibilities and aesthetic qualities, inspiration, art forms, materials and techniques. In these responses, the selected subject matter was discussed in a concise and articulate manner. Sophisticated vocabulary and the discussion clearly showed how the subject matter would be developed further. So many lower scoring answers outlined the focus but not the subject matter. Okay, so why is there a difference between the focus of what you're doing and the subject matter?
Maybe the subject matter tackles like your ideas and stuff, and the focus is how you want to portray it.
Well, I'll use Phoenix, I think, your ideas. So looking at mental health, yeah? So that's the focus, is looking at mental health issues. The subject would be what is in the artworks. Okay, so whether you're taking photos of a person, whether you're painting a person, or so the subject is what is in the pictures. So if you're doing the creative and the beauty in the world is the overarching theme. Is that yours in a nutshell? Very much. Looking at beauty and beauty and emotion. Okay, that's the overall focus. And the subject matter, like personally, if I was doing that, I'd be looking at flowers just because flowers fascinate me and I love close-ups of flowers. That's just me. What are you doing?
I'm focusing on the flowers and how emotions can kind of change in individuals. So I'm going to use flowers and animals together.
Absolutely. And that's, so can you see animals, flowers, flora and fauna, if you want to use bigger words.
Nice.
Flora and fauna are the subject and the focus is the beauty and emotions. Okay? Does that clarify it for all of you to be able to understand that?
The focus and subject matter are kind of sort of confused.
Yeah, they're not. Okay, so your subject matter is, your focus is?
My focus is like just emotion, like giving
Emotion.
like impressionist emotion
Yep.
stuff. And my subject matter is like the cartoons.
Yep. So your focus is the big umbrella, and then your subject matter, you've got some where you've got the cartoons and of people. You've got some where you've got the cartoons of hearts, subject matter. You've got some where you've got, so the cartoons are your materials and techniques, but they're also, the subject is what you're doing in them. So whether it's the little man, whether it's, a portrait of a person, whether it's a photo of a cat or buildings, architecture, all of those can be your subject matter, and they can all be different potential directions within your overall idea or focus. Okay, so the overall focus, and maybe I need to do a song and dance about it at the start to get it clear. So in my exploration proposal, I explored my theme of memories, more specifically family memories, and how family memories play a vital role in forming a family's future. As memories are the building blocks of life, which is a quote from the exploration proposal. I focused on how I could create a personal family memory through my artwork by exploring with subject matter that was important to my family and I, such as family artefacts, objects, and places that my family have lived and infrastructure that is relevant to my family background. Just like my inspiration artist David Hockney in his artwork Garden 2015 Oil on Canvas, I decided to focus on subject matter that is familiar to me, as it would create a more personal focus to my artwork, allowing my artwork to be passed down to future generations as it represents my own family history. In my exploration proposal, I also focused on specific family experiences that may have been positive, celebrations of birthdays, or negative, death, sickness to family members, etc. Okay, so the next question, does that make sense to everyone? Does that?
Yeah.
If you've got questions about it, just write it on the paper, and when I read through it, I'll nut it out in my head. So I don't think you guys did that question because it's talking about the studio process for your final piece. No, development of one potential direction in the studio process.
Yeah, I think we could.
You could have done it. Higher responses identified influences and often one or more artists. They were able to write fluently about materials and media, techniques and processes, and how these were used in the creation of the potential direction. They also wrote about the development of their ideas and how these evolved throughout the process. Many responses focused solely on how they applied materials and techniques, rather than describing how their ideas shaped their studio process. Some responses also did not discuss how art elements and principles were developed through the potential direction to reflect their ideas and demonstrate aesthetic qualities. So remember, art elements and principles, aesthetic qualities. Okay, so it's not a separate thing. The aesthetic qualities are all brought together through the art elements and principles. Do I have
feedback?
Yes.
Can we read through it? Okay.
I'll pause this. Okay, so for this last part, does anyone have a good sentence or line that they would like to share with us that they've read? Ryder, what have you got?
Oh, no.
Remember, it's not your work, it's someone else's.
Don't speak the whole thing.
Something that picks out art elements, studio process.
I attempted. I tried various ways to make a figure head. No, wait. I was reading a different line. I tried various ways to make a figure to fit in the inner head. I attempted to make a figurine with toothpicks and skewers with non-adhesive to hold it together. Oh my gosh, sorry. I was like thinking something else. However, the glue was so difficult, so I used a bunch of safety tape.
Cool.
That's like the process, yeah?
Absolutely. Who's got something with the art elements and how that
I wasn't able to answer.
Yep.
The blend of pink and purple for the hair contrasts the blue clothes, yet it doesn't overwhelm the viewer.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to shut that down. Hope James